Hey guys, this video, how to smash any visual arts examination question, focuses on interpreting what the question is actually asking you to do and say, and using the source material and plates provided. This video will focus on section 1, which is unseen images. Now, the purpose of this video is to provide a guide for how to approach this section. Alright, it will include some activities that aim to develop your ability to respond to unseen images. Okay, because in a lot of ways, section 1 is seen as more difficult to prepare for. Because you'll be presented with artworks that you may never have actually seen before, and artists who you may or may not have heard of, you need to develop skills to be able to break down any artwork that you are given. Okay, so the focus is not on memorizing artworks, but on developing your skill to break down the visual features that are presented to you. Okay, so this video aims to assist you to do that. The key to success within section 1 is to use what you have been given. Okay, the question is carefully constructed in order to guide the type of response you are to give. Okay, so the artworks, which are called plates, are carefully chosen. If quotes have been included, there's a purpose behind them. Same goes for any source material that may provide insight into the artist that's being featured. Okay, so what I can't stress enough with section 1 is that you use everything that is given to you on that page. Right, so before you even begin writing your response, you need to annotate all over that page in order to, start to brainstorm the ideas that you will need to bring into your response. Let's begin by revising some of the ideas presented in part 1 of this video sequence by identifying the content area. Okay, so that's referring to practice, conceptual framework, or frames. So if we look at the sample question, look at plates 4, 5, and 6. Use the cultural frame to discuss how these artists are social motivators through the work they create. Now, this particular question is quite easy in terms of identifying the content area because you are given it immediately within the question by the use of cultural frame. Okay, so we then know that the content area is the frames. Okay, all right, and obviously the specific area within that is the cultural frame. Bear with me though, because some questions are not quite as obvious and you have to look for keywords. Alright, so in that case, you would also need to identify the specific aspect of that content area. Okay, so when dealing with a frames question, it may not actually tell you the frame that you need to use. Alright, so you need to obviously identify with the keywords and what they mean. Okay, so in this question, as I said, it's quite obvious it is the cultural frame. Alright, so, alright, and just a reminder that the cultural frame is concerned with social, class, politics, what's going on in the world, ideology, okay, pretty much anything cultural, alright, is what we're looking to address when dealing with a cultural frame question. Identifying the specific area of content obviously will help guide your response in a particular way because it asks you to draw focus to particular features of a work. So, for example, when dealing with a cultural frame question, you will be looking at social class or status, ideology, racism, anything cultural, okay? However, it's not really enough. You still need to be able to identify what the question is actually asking you to do and say. Now, in most cases, you'll be presented with a glossary term or verb that highlights where you need to go with your response. Okay, some examples of glossary terms or verbs is discuss, analyze, examine, define, explain, describe. Okay, within this question, hopefully you have identified discuss as being the glossary term. Now, discuss means to identify issues and provide points for and or against. Okay, so you're looking at how, in relation to these questions, these particular artists motivate people through their work. Do they or don't they? And give reasons why. Okay, your reasons obviously are being found in the artwork themselves. The beauty of this particular process is that it can also be applied to section 2. All right, even though you are given the content area, steps 2 to 3 will help you break down what's actually being asked of you. Alright, so what you need to do at every response, whether it be in section 1 or 2, is ask yourself the following questions. Firstly, did I correctly address the content area? Okay, so the limits that are placed on a frames question from the cultural perspective. Did I address it, or did I go off into another frame that is not particularly relevant to what the question is asking? And secondly, did I address what the verb asked me to do? Okay, so did I actually discuss in that I provided points for and or against my argument that the artists are or are not social motivators through the artworks they create? Alright, so don't be afraid to reflect, alright, and try and manage your time in a way that gives you the opportunity to do this. Please note that you will not always be provided with a verb. Okay, so this means that you have to be familiar with the different glossary terms from the Border Studies website so that when you read a question, you can associate one of those terms that best suits the way the question is constructed. Alright, and this obviously makes it a lot harder for you to answer the question, okay, so that it just sort of highlights the fact that, you know, things are not going to be handed to you and you may have to infer or read between the lines in terms of what you're actually being asked to do. Okay, so when you're picking out questions to respond to, try and pick ones that have verbs but also ones that don't, just to test yourself and prepare yourself for a situation where maybe the question you're given does not include a verb. So what now? Alright, responding to images that you have never seen before can be extremely difficult, and in some respects section 1 is the most difficult part of the paper. Alright, now by correctly identifying the content area can help guide you, as can correctly identifying the verb, but what if that's not enough? What if you're reading the question and you still don't understand what to do? Right? You need to look at everything you were given on that page. Alright, you'll be provided with plates, source material, quotes. Alright, use everything and develop your skills at being able to break down this information, because it becomes your evidence. Without your evidence, you cannot get full marks. You cannot get in the top band. So, the best way to prepare for this is to deconstruct the information that's presented to you in the plates, captions, and source material provided. Okay, it's a repetitive activity, but it aims to build your skill level up at responding to images that you have never seen. Okay, now what I want you to do is the following activity. Alright, essentially you'll start with a brainstorm which identifies the following features. The type of artwork it is. Okay, so is it a painting, an installation, a print, a design, a sculpture? Alright, the type of artwork and the materials used to create it can be extremely important to your response. What date or era was the work created in? Okay, the reason this is important is because you can associate that with a particular time in history. Okay, and if you're looking at the location of the work or where it was created, you might be able to tie that to an event that wasn't occurring at the time. Okay, the size of the artwork is also important. For example, large artworks or large installation pieces can be quite imposing on the audience, making it very difficult to ignore. Okay, take note of the artist and their nationality, so where they're from and how their cultural background may have influenced their art making practice, okay, or the ideas that they're exploring, right? And that obviously leads into the subject matter. What are they looking at? What are they dealing with? What's the concept behind it? All right. And in doing so, take note of the signs, symbols, and codes. All right. Describe everything in the artwork while you're doing these annotations. All right. What can you use as evidence? All right. From these, what meaning or purpose can be drawn? Okay. And lastly, what does it remind you of? Okay. If you create a brainstorm based on these points for random artworks, then this will develop your ability to respond to any artwork, okay? We want this activity to become second nature so that whenever you're presented an image, you just start going through this brainstorm. All right. Once you've done that, you may choose to pull this into a punchy paragraph, all right, that just provides an overview of the work. Please keep in mind that this activity should only take 5 to 10 minutes for each example. All right. Obviously, the more you practice, the faster you'll become at this. Also, some artworks you'll find easier to deconstruct than others. Okay, but that's the point. You just need to practice, right? And if you do, your skill at breaking down any artwork will be greatly increased, so you can go into your exam feeling confident about the unseen images section. Okay, so on the following slides, you'll be provided with a range of artworks that have been featured in past visual arts examination papers. If you can complete that brainstorm activity for these artworks, you'll be off to a good start, all right? It would also be a good idea for you to locate your own, okay, and embed this into your practice. So maybe once a week, complete a brainstorm on an artwork that you've not seen. That brings us to the end of the video part 2, interpreting what the question is asking you to do and say, and using the source material and plates provided. If you would like to continue to practice these activities, then visit the Border Studies website and check out some past HSC visual arts papers. You can also locate artworks obviously off the internet. Alright, thanks guys and good luck.